You are clear to launch.
Welcome to the Stanton News Network, your first stop in Star Citizen information. Hang tight as we keep you up to date on the latest developments in the UEE. Bringing you the guests and info you crave, along with the opinion and outlook you need.
What is up, guys? We are back after Citizencon, which was a pretty big event. Lots of talking. If you watch it, you know what I mean. I am joined back again here today with Captain Crush, and we also have an amazing guest today, the 11th Hour. He might be known better to you as 11's Hanger on YouTube. If you haven't seen his content before, you can check out the link down below in the show notes. But today's topic is definitely going to be about PvP. But first, we want to get into Citizencon and talk a little bit about that. 11th Hour, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
You watched? Did you watch Citizencon?
I did. I sat with a Wraith Squad and we sat and watched all of it except for maybe the last 15 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And Crush, you were able to catch most of it as well, right?
Yeah, I did. It was pretty enjoyable. I really liked actually watching the stuff on the different speeds they're doing. The new ships they announced, which were, let's be real, I've already got one, and pretty excited about that too. Did not see that coming, so that was pretty exciting. But yeah, it was really enjoyable. There were some things obviously that I wish were happening faster here and there, of course, like the rest of us always do. But it was nice to see some things that I wasn't expecting.
So let me ask you guys this: what was your number one thing that you saw during Citizencon that really impressed you?
For me, the two things was the A1. I loved it. In fact, just the Spirit in general, really cool ship. I've been waiting for basically a Cutlass competitor, just because I'm not a big fan of the Cutlass. I know a lot of people are, and I get it, but for me, it was just a design thing. And so now that the Crusader Spirit exists, it filled that void for me. So I was pretty happy about that. But then also what they're doing with the speeds, I'm actually pretty happy. I think it's going to help combat.
Yeah, the Master Mode is big. Oh, 11th
Yep.
Hour. What about you?
It was funny, like the same thing. I saw the Spirit and I saw the A1 and I was like, okay, so, and I think there's at least 4 or 5 of us in Wraith Squad that picked that ship up. But I was looking forward to the flight modes. And based on how combat is now and the things that they talked about, leading up to IAE, what they did and what they said they were going to do and the numbers are working on is exactly where I thought it was going. And I'm really psyched to see that implemented.
See, so I think all three of us can definitely say that we were interested. Is one of our key things, and is master modes. And
Yeah.
I think that I knew that they were working on something. They've mentioned it many times. They're trying to bring the combat speed down. If you watch any PvP content creator, they'll talk about jousting. They'll talk about noobs, not being able to engage properly. And I was curious how they were going to handle that. And based off their explanation of it, like it seems like when they did it, I was just like, huh, okay, that seems like it's going to work. Like you have different sacrifices. I think that the one thing I questioned was having no shields when you were in that quantum mode. I feel like there's got to be like a delay as you're turning it to quantum mode as you're trying to get out of there. There's got to be some capability of like, hey, I'm still protected while I'm trying to get away from this target a little bit more.
So as it turned out, I think it was within the last 72 hours, Yogi Klatt from CIG, he addressed that, and what he was saying was that the shields go down over time once you go into that mode, which is pretty cool, and also that shield power kind of goes into a reserve. So if you switched out of that quantum mode that he was talking about back into the combat mode, it would bump your shields right back up. So I think it kind of brings some nuance to escaping depending on the ship you're in and the size of your shield generators and also how much your ship can take. You know what I mean? Like if you're in a tight engagement in a light fighter, and maybe you guys are trying to get position and one of them breaks off and goes into quantum, it's highly likely you're probably not going to get away, especially if you were already taking damage before you hit that button,
Yeah.
I think the larger ships. I think multi crew is going to benefit more from being in situations like that because they're able to lay
Yep.
down more firepower in an engagement. They can take a little bit more when they're trying to get away. So um, I think it looks awesome. I think it's great the way they explained it. It sounds like they still are working on some things, but it makes sense because it forces people that want to get into engagement. Like it all forces their commitment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
now you're in it. So
And
I think that's
honestly,
awesome.
I think it also really raises the stakes in terms of like, plotting out when you are going to try to interdict a target. There's a lot more like tactics now that is going to go into creating what would be like known as kind of like, a net. Because right now we have, either QED or either we have the dampener or the QED. And long story short, you're already having to think, okay, well, if it's down there and the armistice is, let's say, X amount of kilometers, then I have to be this much above it to make sure that as he comes up, but I also have to watch what angle he's coming up and try to kind of interdict him at the edge of that armistice so he can't warp away. Uh, and I think that this is going to be something it's going to be now, like even at OM points, you're going to have to start thinking like, well, where could he quickly start jumping to? Because in the video, it looked like he just kind of threw it on, and the ship just kind of started rocketing towards like what would be like going from Microtech to Clio, or from like Grim Hex to Yella. It looked
Right.
like just
So
a
that
fast little warp like that, and he popped it
yeah.
right back out and was flying again.
Now, what they
Yep.
said was that had like it was a limited duration of time that you had to use that, right? And I think he said that there was like a speed that it happened at, which is funny because I think the speed he said sounds like it was close to the speed some ships already go. You know what I mean? So I'm curious as to how that scenario would pan out because technically, I guess you could just go into that. You know what I mean? As long as there's no ship in your immediate path,
Yeah, it's gonna be
would you be
interesting.
able to just boost away? You know what I mean? Is there like a spool time for that, or? And it looked like you kind of had to keep it stable too. It didn't look like it did it by itself. It looked like you had to be on the stick, keeping your nose aligned.
Yeah, kind of
I'm
on
assuming
point.
because of how it's like that happy medium between whatever your top speed was for the ship in quantum. There's like somewhere in there where you still actually do have control of where you're going.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that was really
I
interesting.
think it's gonna be situation based because, like you were saying, with being outside of an armistice, well, let's say it's going to be different trying to interdict one of the Crusader series haulers as opposed to maybe a caterpillar. You know what I mean? The acceleration is different.
Yep.
The turn rate's different.
But then it's
And
also
then
like, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and then the atmosphere kind of helps with that too because Daymar is lighter, Hurston's a little heavier, Microtech like it's very heavy. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm curious how they're going to balance that, and that must have been what he meant when he said they're still working on the numbers because a lot changes because of those master modes.
Yeah, and the thing that's been sticking out to me with the master mode, just because of my play style and combat, I like missiles and torpedoes. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to change all that. Like, especially something like now I don't use it because it's not my go. I don't like the ship, but something like the Shrike, the bomber variant. I think that will actually become a little bit more lethal now. Stuff like that, just because well, unless they're changing the speeds a ton on the missiles and the projectiles and everything else, but I don't think they will because as much, just because I think there's going to be a lot of plus side to basically your missiles and torpedoes becoming more of a game changer. Either dumb firing them or whatever else. It's going to be something you really want to avoid because they probably are going to have a much better chance of hitting you if you're not dropping flares.
Yeah, definitely. Because you figure, I mean, what those missiles that range from 1,300 meters per second up to what, like 14, something like that.
Yep.
And it's
And the
like if you're
torpedoes, I think, are doing like 700, the big ones.
Yeah,
yeah, between
I think they go to
between like
700.
450 and 7. So and that's the thing. It's like if you're in an engagement and let's say you're capped between the SEM and then your max speed in the combat mode is what, like they said, it was like 500 somewhere around there would be like your max with boost that was limited. It's a different situation trying to get away from a missile fired within 5,000. If it's still traveling at the speed that they travel now, and you're limited to, you know what I mean? You're
Yeah,
limited to that
Yeah, like they'll
500,
have to know.
and you got a missile coming at you
It's-
at 1300. It's like, well, it's a different situation then, and it's just not even just the flares, it's the timing of the flares. There's not a lot
Yep.
of time. If something's moving at you that fast, there's not a lot of time. So
I think it'll also make ships like we were talking about actually before this. The Inferno. I think even things like that will become more lethal. Just and kind of a scarier fight just because of what it's packing.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
like that. Like if your ship is made to be, um, you know, all out destruction. That's kind of what I want to see. I want to see a ship that's gonna kick, a lot of ass in combat. If that's its purpose. Otherwise, because right now my biggest issue is something like the Inferno. It's not always as viable for me, and it's not always my go-to whenever we're out and about doing stuff, unless we're taking out like I don't know Hammerhead or something, because everything
yeah,
else just moves too fast for it.
yeah. For the most part, I think it's like rather you get to that like medium to heavy fighter range is right where that's at, and then anything bigger, it's fair game. But
Yep.
yeah, I hear you
Yeah,
on that one.
absolutely. So I'll say this, I think the master modes was one of my things. I would say the other big one that I was really excited for was the pressurization of cockpits and like of ships and being able to be penetrated and lose compression or having to manage like power systems, like being able to shut off the gravity in a ship to give more energy to your shields. I was like, oh yeah, here comes like it's kind of, I think that's gonna very quickly. The only other thing that would probably influence it as much would be like the components on components thing that they talked about as well. Um, but I think that the ability to micromanage resources, like shutting off gravity to put more power to shields and overpowering your shields, is going to really destroy that. Like, hey, what ship is the meta? Because there's going to be so many different play styles. Like, yeah, you can use an arrow, but a cutlass that's powered differently might be able to take it down no problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And I with you mentioning that too, if you look at all the things that they talked about without them having to really say it, what they're saying was there's a time coming very soon where you're going to need people. Because
Yeah.
all the things that you just talked about, you're not running around on this ship by yourself doing that shit. Not in a time frame that's going to allow you to survive if you're being attacked. You know what I mean? Like, what if it's, you know what I mean? What if there is an issue with like you get a hole in your ship? Now what? And maybe you had a flight suit on no helmet. Now what do you do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna make it where whenever you decide to run around in your larger ships, you need to consider maybe having some help.
At least one person.
I think
Yeah.
even
you
in
know,
something like I
at
think
least
even
at
something
least
in a
one
cutlass,
person.
even in a cutlass, if a fire starts in the back, or you want to start like repairing the pressurization or repairing the shield module because it got shot, there's
Yeah,
no way you're getting out of the pilot seat and doing it. You need even two people on a ship like that.
exactly.
Yep.
It really makes me wonder sometimes what people are gonna like. They're gonna have to do some kind of solution. And I know that they've said that a ship will be able to partially be AI, like in terms of like being like blades, quote unquote AI. And then there
Hmm.
will be some spots that are also fillable by NPCs, AI. But then on top of that, I think that they've stated almost every single time they talk about it that it's not going to be 100% operational. There's going to be X amount of seats that can only be maybe 70% of the seats, 60% of the seats on a ship can be occupied by NPCs slash blades, and even the blades will take up CPU process on your ship that you could be using those slots for other stuff.
Exactly. And they also said that actual NPCs are never going to be better than a person doing whatever the job is, whatever that role is needs to be filled. Won't be done better, but won't be done better than a person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you have a person that's what they do and that's what they enjoy, yeah, it's supposed to always.
Well, I think we talked about it on last week's episode that, we all know like people that like doing that support role, like that shotgun slash
Mhm.
like, run and gun RPG guy. And I think a lot of people are waiting for that engineer role in Star Citizen to really be born because that's what they'd rather do. Like I know a lot of people, like, if you go in, if you see in general chat, and I know 11, you do this a lot. I'll go in, I'll just randomly like type, SCD1 is closed on Daymar. And then people will just start showing up just to fight you. Just because you said that nobody's allowed to go there, people will show up and start trying to PvP. And when you do something like that, I very man, I think I'd say at least 20 to like 30% of the time somebody shows up in that capacity.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I
so
think there's them working on medical and trying to get some of these other professions basically out, and so you can enjoy. I'm not thinking that it'll be to the level that maybe it keeps you on for hours, but at least to the level of like someone who wants like FPS, like the bunker missions, right? I think they'll
yeah.
have a little bit more towards that direction with those things, and I really like that just because one, it's going to bring in more people, and it just adds more of a character to the game, I guess.
I think they're just. I mean,
Definitely does.
I think they're just waiting for the opportunity, man. Like I was just saying, I'll have people show up, to SED1 and Arrows and Vanguard Sentinels and stuff, trying to like kill me, and then I'll have other people that they're usually mining characters, or they're usually like doing like delivery missions, and they're a freelancer, and they're like, man, I don't, I want to gun somebody's redeemer, or like, who needs a support guy? I'm down to go with you. Like, let's go kill this guy. But they won't. They know that they don't want to do a one-on-one engagement. They know that they don't want to come, in their, Cuddy Red or their prospector and try to PvP, but they are down to be that support character and a PvP engagement. I think
I
a lot
mean,
of people will get combat, their
even
combat itch
myself.
just with that.
I was gonna say, even myself, I really enjoy doing the same things there. Like I don't actually always want to fly because I find it fun just to work with other people in the bigger ships. Like I don't mind being a gunner, even though I've got cool ships to go fly myself. Like sometimes I'll even pull out my own ship and say, hey, you have fun flying it. I'll be a gunner in this thing because I don't always get to do it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the having to have like group work to get a
Yeah,
job done
it's awesome.
because it's challenging.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes for
absolutely.
a better experience too, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So that,
not that it's not fun, like being in your own ship. Like it's just there's so much things that go untapped when it's just you doing your own thing, or when you're with your crew and you're all in your own ships. Like there's it's a different game when you do it together. It's a different
It
experience.
is. It
absolutely,
really is. Yeah, I like
absolutely.
the camaraderie it brings.
Yep,
I guess that's
definitely.
part of it, right?
That's what it
Um,
is.
and then just also figuring out how to work together in the different situations, depending what ship you're in too. Like that can be fun in and of itself. Like figuring out strategy and things like that. Like I enjoy that. And then when you're in a ship by yourself, sometimes you can figure it out with others, but it's a different engagement. And so I just appreciate the work that they're trying to do to bring that more into play because it is nice. I wish they would do some things faster, of course, but
As we all do.
Yeah, right.
but it has been nice to see, and so I'm all for it. I would like to see more of it, and it'd be cool too when you have the medical gameplay and stuff coming in because now there's more of a purpose to having someone like that with you. So then you can implement that as well with some of your crewed ships, and I just think that would be really really nice and cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So let me ask you guys: did you guys pick up a Gray Cat STV?
Oh yeah,
What are the
I
thoughts? I love it.
I
I
think it's
have
great.
already spent a few hours just driving around.
I was the guy who, when it got mentioned in the org, that talked about it. I think I said it was Jeep Liberty or some outrageous thing that I said because I was bothered. I was upset about some other things that were going on with the game at the time, and it's just like so when it got presented to me, I was just like whatever. And then I saw one, and I saw the colors, and then I got to drive one, and then now I have one. And I've got a few paints. I got a few paints for it too. So
All the track
there's
stuff they've
that.
been working on is what got me to buy it.
Yeah.
And then I drove it and I was like, this is a way better version of the PTV.
It was nice. Like it was nice. Like it wasn't all floaty, and like how it is, and you drive some of the other stuff. It's like the wheels are never really on the ground,
Yeah.
and this one was just not like that.
No, it feels like it handles a lot of the terrain pretty well too. Not
Yeah,
perfectly, I'll admit. Like I've spent about 2 hours driving it now. And I can say that it does get a little buggy on some of the geometry, but that's
yeah,
everything out there, so that is what it is. But it feels nice to drive, and like when you go to turn at high speeds, it feels more like it probably should, especially like on the dirt and stuff.
yeah. It was almost like not playing Star Citizen for a moment when I was driving that thing.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, this works too well.
Yeah, controllers in my hand. I'm getting the vibration from the rubble on the ground. I'm like, this is kind of awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it
feel
is
like,
pretty awesome.
for me, I feel like it literally behaves just like the PTV, just with like a little bit firmer of a suspension.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
feel like I don't know if it's just that it's a little wider or what it is, but like the fact that it has a little bit of a firmer suspension, but it's wider, makes it like the handling feels the exact same as the PTB, even though it's not as squishy. Because I
Mhm.
think the wideness makes up for like a little bit of that. Because you can really bank some corners in that thing. Like, I've been taking it to the Clio racetrack and just messing around with them with friends, and you can really do some crazy stuff in them without them exploding. I've also just like hit a small rock and had it explode. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
mileage may
Yeah,
vary.
that happens.
yeah. It does. Mileage may vary. You got
So
that warranty though,
I do like how the components on it though are physicalized in like the hood and the bumper, if you would, or I guess it'd be like the grill of the car. And then
Yeah,
the
and how
two
they
like
present themselves.
yeah, I think that's really, really cool. I could tell that like all the ships that they have coming out are definitely closer to like that new component, standard, if you would. And I feel like every ship that they do, every ground vehicle that they do, since they've started moving that direction towards like, hey, we're just going to build it. Like, even if the components right now aren't interactable, we're going to start building it right now with that already in place. Obviously, is the logical thing to do. But you can tell
Yep.
that every ship they do it on, they get smarter and smarter about the way that they present it and where they put those resources. And like, I think the first ship I really noticed that in was the 400i when they had like the systems room with the air conditioning. And you can tell there's like I don't know what you'd call it, like the misting or whatever you want to call it, the climate control in the room.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like, that was the first one I saw. Like, okay, this is the first ship that really makes sense. All the components are organized into like one cluster and one place in the vehicle, and it makes sense that it would be in this like almost server room
Yeah,
inside
the
the vehicle.
400i. That thing was made so well.
Yeah, it's
Really, really well.
gorgeous.
Like
I don't
the
even like
layout.
luxury ships.
I don't either. Like I don't have a 400i, but I did for a little bit just to try it out, and I really liked the layout. I was like, wow, okay, so they've been really learning from the 600i to the 400i. Huge difference in how they've done the layout and like what's actually going to be useful for that ship size. I think it was really well done.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. Something I wanted to touch on real quick when you were saying about the level of detail with that the STV.
Mhm.
So you remember the last time that you were in, let's say, a Ursa or whatever, one of the terminals, and it blew up or something happened to it?
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's pretty often.
Right. So it's usually like the the vehicle itself, right? And maybe the wheel
Mhm.
comes off or something like that. We were flying a Cutlass Black and they got shot. No, we're flying a Freelancer Miss and the back got shot up and the STV got hit. And we went into the back part of the Freelancer to look, and there was a brake caliper, a rotor, the suspension, a tie rod end, a stabilizer, like on the ground. Like that's how many pieces came out of the wheel. And we just looked at it because it's like, you know how it is when stuff blows up. It's random
Yeah,
pieces
just
of
random little scrap metal and
random
stuff.
pieces of hollowness.
Yeah,
And with that thing got, damaged, like everything was there. Like everything. It
Now
was
I wonder if that has something to do with, because I know that when they first bring salvage in, player ships or player usable ships and
Mhm,
NPC ships will be the first thing salvageable. 'Cause that's what they have like mapped. I
mhm.
wonder if that was part of them mapping that, was them saying like, hey, we need to start kind of like physicalizing more of these components. And maybe the SDV is just like a polished version of that.
That was the conversation we had after we saw that. Because it was so much you couldn't miss it. You know what I mean? Because usually stuff blows up and you get used to seeing it. You don't really think anything of it. And
yeah,
it was just and it stayed there. That was the thing. Like we went and did other stuff. It stayed there.
Have you guys seen? I forgot
that
who
is
it
pretty cool.
is. I'll find it and I'll link it in the show notes down below. But there is a video online where somebody took as an asset the Drake Cutlass Black and rendered it where it was like every single piece removed off the ship that they have physicalized inside. And it was, I mean, it wasn't even the whole ship. It was literally just the engine. It was just the engine. It may have been a Reddit user. I think it was a YouTube video. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna find it and I'll list it in the show notes. But I mean, it was just hundreds of parts that they have physicalized inside of the model.
Yeah, it's a lot of
I,
it's a
I,
lot of
I'm
work.
if that's what they're doing with everything, I really like that because if you like if something breaks on the ship or maybe your wheel pops off while you're riding, you hit something and it breaks off the wheel or something. It's cool to see that level of detail because those are the kind of things. It's like when you go inside your ship, for example, that level of detail is what brings more people into the game
Yeah,
because it's like look at all the other space sims out there. They're cool. There's other cool games out there. Don't get me wrong, but when I there's nothing that's the level that Star Citizen is doing on that detail level where once you walk in and you see it, you feel almost like you're more there, like you get to experience it really. And so I think
exactly.
what they're doing with that STV, they put that out on everything, which I think obviously they will. It's the way they've been doing everything. But that level of immersion I think is great.
It is.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah,
is.
I think that you can tell that they've gone to great lengths to, always put like immersion and fidelity at the forefront. And even if the servers aren't running I think like the server issues and stuff like that is really the main thing breaking that immersion when you're playing. But
Yeah.
if it wasn't for those performance issues, the game is already, even in its state, like a lot more like immersive and physicalized than most video games out there. Or
Yeah,
at least they consider the user, a lot more than most out there.
definitely.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing of sometimes I might only have 30 minutes to get on, but just the experience of getting in my ship and going in and out of Atmo, I can't get that in any other game like that. And so, yeah, I think the detail that they've been putting into it, and once again, I wish it was faster. Like, we can be critical of it as well. Just there's only so much complaining to do, and then is it really going to get you anywhere? And so I think they're trying to do their best on their end, but I would like to see some of it faster because it would be a lot more fun than the next 5 years. But at the same time, what they're building is going to be no one else is even competing.
No,
So
no, they're not.
Yeah, I think that I mean there are people that are talking about trying to do it, but they're so far behind that I think that
exactly,
at this point and what they've already been able to do, I think it'd be hard to. I think the whole argument of like, oh, they're not making any progress, they're not working on the game, like it's so foolish, and to think that there's people sitting around and sitting there just voluntarily like saying that they're working at a company without getting paid to do anything just to scam everybody out of their money is even crazier. But I do think that the one thing that CIG could work on to eliminate a lot of those kind of, far cries, if you would be like they just have to get more accurate with their estimates. Because like,
yeah,
318, like I personally am calling it, like I don't think we're gonna see it until like after Christmas. I think it maybe January at the earliest, honestly, because at the end of the day, it's just now going to Evocati and it's not looking, too polished, which that's the point of Evocati, but it's a big change. And I'm one of those people, you guys both have mentioned like, oh, I wish it would be faster. I'm okay with it not being as fast if they just start getting it right and trying to shoot, better estimates out. I'd rather say, hey, it's going to be this patch for X amount of time. Like, great, they're single player games. I'll spend a little bit of time and I'll still spend time in Star Citizen. But I think that them communicating deadlines and saying, we look to have it out by this date, and then missing it by a week is one thing, missing it by a month is another, missing it by a quarter is, that's a whole different story.
yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think it would make a lot of people happier, where they would probably deal with less pushback if if they said they were going to have something on X date. It's okay if you miss it, like because us working in the development world, like I get it. You're trying to hit these deadlines, but there's just things that happen in between, and you can't account for everything perfectly. But when you have to push it back a quarter, or even sometimes 2 months for some of the things they talk about, or a month, I just feel like they need to work on their timing a little bit better. But that seems to be sometimes issues just within the industry itself. But at the same time, what they're doing, I don't expect it to be. It's not going to be something like where you can pump out a Call of Duty every year. It's not that same level of game. It's got so many more assets inside the game, so much more to do with servers, server tech that they have to work on. So, looking at all those things, and now I will say for me working in the industry, like I have a little bit more understanding, I guess. Or I guess patience is probably the better thing to say, just because I'm used to it. But at the same time, they do need to be better about saying what they're going to be doing and then hitting those deadlines, at least hitting them much closer, so that way people are, I guess, less frustrated with some of the
You
waits.
know, yeah, we're just being like vocal about what it is. What's funny is that it's almost sometimes like you don't see things unless they pop up on like YouTube or somebody's mentioned it on Twitch. But I feel like when those moments come, I would pop in if I was CIG and say, "Hey, this is where we thought we were going to be. This is why we're not here. This is what
Yeah,
we plan to. This is what we plan to do, and this is what we're shooting for." Regardless of how pissed off everybody gets after that, you know what I mean? It's like it is what
at
it is
least you know.
because at least you know. And then the other thing is that I'm sure that with some of the things that they're doing, they actually don't know until they get there. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's a
And
lot of
and and it
R&D.
and it's like, so just say that this is where we were, and then this happened. So either A, we have the plan to do this and we plan to be here, or we're formulating a plan for this with an attempt to be here. We'll keep you posted. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
be
Because
like,
even saying something like that, that buys you a few weeks. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
exactly,
And then you can
exactly.
say anywhere in there, this plan didn't work out. We're moving to this, or it is working out, and we're looking forward. You know what I mean? And then short and sweet, and
Well,
let
and,
that
and
and let that be that. And then whatever the community wants to do with that information is then on them. They want to make videos and be pissed off, or they're whatever. But
yep,
they said something, and
yep.
that's all it takes.
And part of it too, that I've been wondering is sometimes when they talk about some of these things that they'll be working on or wanting to implement, and maybe they have to push it back a whole patch, right? Like a whole from 3.18 to 4.0 or something. I really do wonder if part of that is just like you were saying, they're working on things that they don't even always know or have the answers to. And I think a personal opinion, just from experience, I'm wondering if it's, they get to that point where they're bringing what they were talking about to life, but then it's not interacting with all the rest of the code or the game the way
Right.
it was supposed to.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
then they realize right then and there, oh crap, we have to have X, X, Y, and Z, before we can implement this because we're missing A, B, and C.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. Because I think oftentimes we forget. Me and the race were talking about this the other day. Oftentimes we forget that we have something to actually play, right? So we play it.
Yep.
And after we play it for a little while, it becomes a game. But in reality, it's like there are things being built. Some of the things that they are building are things that don't exist.
Yeah.
Some
It
things that they're building are ideas and they have to try this and try that. And it's like, I
Yeah, it's
think
a
the
word.
fact that we have something to play on a daily basis is what creates this expectation of soon. So that when they
yeah.
say something that feels like, oh, okay, maybe in 3 months, maybe this will be in a month, maybe that thing will be in 2 months. But the reality of it is that it's hard to separate when you have something to do already. It makes it hard to understand, well, why can't you just do this and that? Why can't you know what I mean? And the
Because you're
reason why
invested in it.
the reason why you think that is because I hop in my ship and I hit F2 and I call the whatever and I take off and then all this other stuff works. So like, what's the problem? And it's like, how many steps was it for you to even be able to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm a victim of it. I remember I think it was 2020. I was really pissed off with CIG. And I was actually getting ready to just be done. And I was sitting at my desk and I clicked on something that I didn't know was there. The star map. You guys ever seen the star map on the website? It's like the star map app.
The arc map thing,
Arc
dude.
map. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I remember the
So
first one
I
on that.
click on that shit. This little graphic comes up. Music starts playing. This 3D thing comes up on the screen, and I just scrolled out. And I'm like, holy shit. And it was that moment that I realized that there's so much more going on than what I see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. Like you
And
realize that they're building a universe. They're not building a map.
and when I saw that, I just was like, I didn't feel the way I felt anymore. And I'm not like a super defender of, everything CIG does is awesome, but it was that moment where I realized what they were building was bigger than what we had.
Yeah.
It's bigger than what we have right now.
Yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
it's bigger than anything else. And anybody trying to even compete right now, I feel like they're anywhere 5 to 10 years behind.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of stick. One of the things that helps me stick with it is it's kind of like a lot of the things that people want to build. Sometimes they want it instantly. They might want it in a year or two, but all the work that's going to have to go into it might take them 10 years. And so if you really want it, you're just going to have to stick with it. And the way I
That's pretty
try
much
and
what it
look
is.
at exactly, but the way I try and look at a Star Citizen is almost like they've given us a live view of what they're making, and we get to play it while they're making it. And
Yep.
instead of having to sit and wait and have to deal with a bunch of hype for something like Cyberpunk and then be disappointed, you can play it. Sometimes be disappointed while playing. It happens, but I think part of that reason for it happening is because we are invested in the game. And I don't mean like a money sense. I mean just how much, if you're following the content with your time and money, whatever it is, you're giving something up to take part in it. And so it makes you want to see it grow faster. Well, I mean, I'm very guilty of this. But like I said, at the same time, I try and be reasonable about it just because I realize what they're trying to do is pretty big. Like it'll be a big game. So it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if y'all have ever read Ready Player One, but
Yeah. Mhm.
it's more like that.
Yeah.
It's they're actually building, because Ready Player One is way different than the movie. In case y'all haven't read the book,
Yeah.
but
It definitely
it's
is.
it's very space like, and so they even have like portals and stuff, like wormhole type things that you go through to these other areas. And I was like, man, it's just that's what Star Citizen's building, is a lot of that, and they're building it in detail. Because you have to, if you don't start the way they're doing it and you try and do what what's I'm going blank, Elite Dangerous. That game's great, but they're doing it the opposite way, and I don't think it'll ever pan out the way they want it to compared to Star Citizen. And so it's just, I guess you got to stick with some of the hurdles and just
Yeah.
accept what it is. But it has been really fun overall for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of the things I'll do that just kind of keeps me like interested, like especially if I don't have a lot of time to play. I've gone so many times through just looking at like the different planets and stuff and ArcMap, and then I'll
Yeah.
look them up on like the Star Citizen wiki. Like there was one I found the other day. What was it? It was Castle,
Mhm.
Cassel, in the like Gauss system. And it's literally like a rave planet. Like people just go there and party. Like it's known as like being a giant like resort world where like everyone just pretty much parties in like a space Miami. And I was like,
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
cool. Like who knows what that's gonna look like? Like you'll just see all this crazy stuff that that they're working on, but we obviously we don't have access to yet. But you see that kind of stuff and you're just like, man, like when that kind of stuff comes into fruition, it's going to be like it won't be anything like what we're talking about today. There will be so many missions that you'll have to explain which thing you're talking about, what day, like you know what I'm saying. You're gonna have to be okay. Well, which mission, which variant, because like there's multiple versions of that mission depending on where you're at, what planet you're on. I think it's gonna be a really fun game to grow with, but I think it's truly gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be hard to specialize in something.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way they're building it too, when you do specialize in something, there's going to be, like, you get to build strategy around that. You know what I mean? Like you would in real life. Like, okay, I got to go be, let's say you had a bunch of EMS or something. You'd have to figure out what your strategy is, like setting up the business and everything else. You could do, not necessarily if you wanted to have a business for it in game, but you'd still have to, depending what you're doing, build that level of strategy and tactics in to try and be the best. And that's cool that it has that ability, because it's just adds so much more to it than just memorizing a map or memorizing whatever it is you need to try and improve, and then also just increasing tactics. Because now you can
Agreed.
have a layer of depth of critical thinking throughout, which can be pretty fun.
And that's what I like about it. And see, and that kind of stuff takes time, because there are some things. Like for instance, one time we were flying. It was me and one of the race were in a hurricane, and we were getting hit with distortion, and we don't really get shot a lot. So when it happened, I was kind of like, oh shit, and I could see the temperature of the ship rising, and I knew something was getting ready to happen. Our shields were already down. I couldn't figure out what to do. So I'm like, well, you know what? Heat shields trying to charge. Cool. Turn the shields off. They're already down anyway. So I hit the button for the shields, and then I hear the coolers make this refresh sound, which just sounded like a refresh, and then the overheating stopped. And then I turned the shields back on and started powering, but the distortion damage that was hitting us stopped affecting us. And I only thought to do that because of how deep the game is and how other things that I've tried, how the game was able to respond to them because they were incorporated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's what I would have thought to do if I was in that situation because it made sense. However, the game was like, yeah, that's in here too. And if you have the common sense or have the sense to understand that and do that, then this is the reward that you get. And it was just like, that
It
was
was
a lot.
nice.
That was, it was nice because, it kept us alive, but it was nice to see something like that happen because I don't think I've played anything like that. Where you know what I
Yeah.
mean, where that situation could have even arose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing about that. Something like the ability of having that happen in the first place is like, imagine if you have someone who's amazing at dogfighting, but then you have a cargo guy who's amazing at defense. Because of things like that, it actually makes it where that cargo guy can, let's say they're equivalent, like the guy attacking him should be able to take him out. But because of the level of strategy you can imply, like the cargo guy might not be great at fighting back, but he might be an amazing defensive player. And so he can have that ability and well, extra in-depth gameplay, and he could end up surviving, no problem, because he's a better defensive player than or his defensive ability was able to outmatch or survive the attacker, even
Right.
though normally that
Like
attacker would destroy everybody
power
else.
management, working shield
Yeah,
faces and things. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. And so that I think is cool because now, even if you aren't like the guy that likes to engage in combat, you can still actually learn ability to engage, but not in the sense of offense. You're more of a defense. And so that's a whole nother, in my opinion, level of gameplay of pilots, like pilot focus that we would need. And it's not, I think, 100% there yet where everybody's doing that as much. But I think in the future that'll be more of a thing. You'll see pilots that are, they're like, oh, well, I'm more focused on the defensive side, support side of it. So the way they fly is much different than someone that's more offensive.
And it's awesome because what I feel like is that for the thinking person, for the person who pays attention and has an understanding of, how things are functioning, there's gameplay there for you.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's what I like about Star Citizen.
Yeah.
When you start to understand the game, things start to make sense, and then you try certain things and you find out, wow, okay, cool. The game actually responds to that. Like it kind of makes that gap between, I guess skill level at that point. And critical thinking, situational awareness, stuff like that. Like there are things in the game that are available to you if you're that type of person, which I think is awesome. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Now, speaking about situational awareness, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, I definitely want to make sure that we talk about is them coming out with the skill trees because, right, situational awareness, that's what you call, a pilot skill, if you would, right? Like you, the 11th hour, have done probably more hours of PvP than most players do in their entire first year. I would say for most players at least, you are one of the most active PvP players, always just really hunting that one type of engagement down. Now, you build up skill, you build up muscle memory, you build up things like that, especially when you're flying with sticks over the course of that tenure. And them saying that they're coming out with skills, I don't know if you guys played Star Wars Galaxies.
Yep.
So in Star
Done.
Wars Galaxies, I'm sure you okay. So in Star Wars Galaxies, one of the things that they did is they came out with this update that it really just completely like it fucked it. That's the only way to even describe it, man. Is it ruined a lot of the value of the game and a lot of the skill of the game. And one of the things that I think that we've been afraid of or also praised about Star Citizen is the fact that they don't in any way, shape, or form have a skill tree. So, if you guys have played, have either of you guys played New World by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so in New World, I don't know if you remember this. I played during launch, and I played Elder Scrolls Online, and I remember vividly when the game starts, everyone's having fun. I remember the beta, and then the game comes out, and day one, there's Chinese botters, Korean botters that are already absolutely destroying in New World it was the fishing. If you remember, they were like farming the crazy in-game fish and then selling them. And you would just see like hundreds of people sitting around one tiny pond, just dropping, 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 knowing that they were pretty much guaranteed to level up an account, sell a ton of gold online from selling all this fish. And I don't want to see that happen with Star Citizen. I don't want to see somebody being able to like AFK macro their way to success in the game. That really, at least for me personally, scares me in terms of what we're seeing right now. What are your thoughts on it, guys?
No, I agree on that because well, I played New World at launch as well, and I'll be very honest. Like I was super into cutting down trees in that game, really into it. No game has got me to gather resources like New World. So one, I'll give New World credit where gathering resources in that game was fun. If you enjoyed that, which I normally didn't enjoy it, but for some reason in that game I really did. So first day, all I did was chop down trees, and I got to. I was the first person. I don't know if in the game or I know for on our server for sure to 100 woodcutting, but I had to sit there and do it. Like I didn't. I don't think I would have like enjoyed or getting to that top level woodcutting if I had just done a bunch of macros or something else just to basically cheat it the way up because it was fun doing it. Like I ran into other people doing it and actually created a little community of woodcutting out of it. And so I don't know if that necessarily will play out the same way in Star Citizen because of how they're setting it up. I don't know. I guess my one worry would be the money side of the game. I think that could get messed up as far as like maybe people. The system's so big, so I don't know if the botting will affect it as bad because of that. But where I
You
see it
say that, man. I
really,
saw it happen in Eve.
yeah, that's
Eve
true.
had a
That is
ton of
true.
systems, and like mining still got messed up.
I think it'll really mess with the economies though,
Yeah. Well, I mean
and
that's
that,
I feel like the main thing they go after. They don't try to start PvPing everybody.
yeah,
I have seen that happen in Eve where like gold miners do go to war with actual mining orgs over a certain area, which I think is almost kind of cool. Um, but I have definitely seen where they'll ruin a server's economy overnight.
yeah. Then if it ends up being an issue, they'll have to definitely do something about it because I don't um want to have to basically have my experience ruined, whatever it is, just because of you know, pretty much like World of Warcraft gold farming. Uh, yeah, I don't know how
Um,
they'll end up balancing that themselves.
I think that they probably haven't figured it out either.
But they
And
haven't run into it.
I really have thought about why they would bring in something like that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's to make the game more accessible. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That would make sense. But at the same time, it's like, what would what would a skill be? You know what I mean? What
Yeah.
would that be? What would you have, and how would you, and how would you get it? Because yeah, like the situational awareness thing, that varies person to person.
Uh,
So we would hope that it wouldn't be anything like that. And what they said, they were talking about strength and stamina and things like that, which makes sense. I mean, it could be to the point where maybe you have to go to a fitness location somewhere and do real time amount of fitness, cardio, or whatever in the course of a day to have any benefit. You know what
yeah.
I mean? It could be something like that. Like it's
It,
something as simple as going to the gym in the morning before work.
if
They
they
could do it
wanted
that
to,
way.
if they wanted to keep it more sim-like, the way I could see them doing it would instead of having like where you know level something up, you could do it almost like in real life with like certifications, in-game certifications. So you have to like do a quest or do a certain amount of this and then go get this done. But it's not necessarily just here, just go mine these rocks. It would be a little bit more than that, to kind of create more of an experience out of it too. But then you could build up this list of certifications, and maybe those certifications give you access in game, like to something else, almost like a guild would in Elder Scrolls Online. So I don't know. I think something like that maybe would be a little bit more, because then you could also, it wouldn't allow bots or farmers to go in and so easily just jump into something and level it up that way. They would actually have to go for each thing they were wanting to kind of mine into. They would have to get all these certifications for it. Actually do the game and gameplay.
What if they limited it to your actual physical attributes as they could be in real life? Like for instance, you can put on a flight suit, right? And probably light armor. But what if your strength and stamina affected your ability to walk around in heavy armor?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Or
see
your
what you're saying. So
or your
like
or
the
your
armor
ability
from
to, right, or your ability to even put heavy armor on, right?
yeah.
Or let's say maybe your ability to carry a railgun or a grenade launcher. You know, some of the larger weapons in the game. Maybe your ability to hold a light machine gun stable and when you're firing it. You know what I mean? Because you know you can put a compensator on it, cool, and it'll mitigate a majority of the recoil. But it's like, what about your own actual ability to be able to hold that weapon and operate it in a way that is effective? You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean? So like
Well,
physical attributes as opposed to being able to hear shit a mile away
I
or
wonder how the exosuits will affect that
run
too.
15 miles per hour for like a half an hour. Like I
Yeah.
don't I don't think they're going to be fantastic. I think because what we know skills to be in skill building in games can turn into this fantastic thing where you know like you got an incredible heart character, you're just still a regular sized person. I don't think they're going to do that. You know, there's talk of the Titan suits that they were supposed to have and gravity boots and there's heavy armor and the weapons and stuff that are there. Like I don't think that they would make it so you're like some super dude or some super chick who, you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be that way. I think they may find a happy medium between realism and fun
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe have it affect what you could do. Like when they talked about stamina, I immediately thought about heavy armor because you guys been playing and you most people that I come across, they look like the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
They do. And
Fully
they're
decked
running
out.
here and they're running there and they're running here and running there, and it's like yeah, that armor comes with a certain resistance to ballistic and laser fire, with the conventional like handheld weapons, but it's like what if your physical attributes determine whether or not you can even put that heavy armor on? It would be a different situation then.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Chris Roberts, I think, even was talking about, well, there will be a time where you're not going to be walking around gunned up with your helmet on and full armor walking around the city. It's not going to be a thing. So maybe that's something maybe that is something to consider, or something that they could do, and maybe even the path that they were on when they just mentioned it, because it was just a mention. You know what I mean? They didn't really go into detail about it. But I don't. If you look at all what they're doing with the ships and the detail with the ships and gas clouds and the biometric clouds and ship detail and all the things that they're doing, I highly doubt that they would come up with this like fantastic version of a person that you could be by boosting your skill sets.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be the case.
Yeah. I don't either, especially with how they've done everything else. It
Yeah,
doesn't seem like
exactly.
they want to head that way, because then it's just who puts the most time in the game.
Right.
And then that makes it harder for other people to sometimes get in, especially with something as big as Star Citizen. Like this is a game where the more time you put in, it's like Eve. Like you really build up a lot by playing over time. Because I've had a few friends that have played Eve for a long time. In fact, still do, and they really dumped hours in to do the things that they did. But I will say, because of the way it was set up, like how Star Citizens, even more so, right? it leads to all those really cool events that happened in Eve that I've never even really played, but I enjoyed watching on YouTube because they were really interesting.
Gotcha.
I played Eve for a long time, and the most rewarding part for me of building everything up was literally the day I knew I was quitting for good. I had played like Star Citizen for like a week and a half during a free fly a few years ago, and I was like, man, this game is amazing. I love like the fidelity of it. I've always said I would love if Eve and Halo somehow like had a baby, and it was really the closest thing to it. Um,
Yep.
so I jumped like deep into it. And I remember doing like, how can I get the most people to come over to this game with me from my alliance, but also what could I do with all this time I've spent on Eve? So I actually did something called like the final Eve giveaway, where I did a live stream on Twitch, and I pretty much just said, hey, everybody that comes in, like just watch me play Star Citizen, but every 10 minutes I'm going to be pausing. I'm going to be like pretty much spinning a wheel and giving away like everything in my Eve inventory, from like, like thousands of dollars of ships to like, but just everything. And I gave, some stuff went to brand new players, some stuff went to old players, veterans. It went all over the place, but it was all like it was just a really fun, um, it was just a fun experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
And
And
I actually got quite a few people to come over here too, which is awesome.
I will say, as much as we talked earlier about sometimes the community sometimes can be a little rough sometimes in Star Citizen. I think since it's grown, but overall, the experience that I've had is it's a very open, helpful compared to other games, right? If I went and jumped in something like WoW or Elder Scrolls, actually, I will say Elder Scrolls has gotten better about it recently just because it's so small again. But something like WoW, and you just typed in general chat, hey, need some help with this. A lot of times, most people are just going to ignore you, and then sometimes you'll just see in chat people talking shit. And in Star Citizen, the experience that I've had, even now, if you go in chat and you say, "Hey, not understanding this," you kind of let people know you're new.
Mhm.
You'll more than likely get one person on there that will reply that they'll help you or tell you what's going
That is
on,
true.
and that's
That's
pretty
true.
nice. Like I appreciate that because you really don't see that in a lot of other games these days, and that's the kind of stuff that when I first started playing WoW in 2004, when it came out, like that was normal. And in fact, since WoW, I haven't really played a game that had a community that you just kind of wanted to be a part of and get to know other people. Like it actually got, just like WoW did, it got me to meet a bunch of people I'd never met before, just online playing a game, right? And we actually ended up having a little community like we do now. And so I really appreciate that side of the Star Citizen community. It's refreshing.
And it's still so young too. I think that once we see, like, because we're not going to really have that sense of community until there's something to be a community over. Right now we can go and do like dynamic events, and I think you see a lot of orgs show out, and those are the orgs that right now do have a community built around, like, admittedly, no features that really are built for them.
Yeah.
They're just engaging as friends, more or less. But I think that as we start seeing like manufacturing and resource gathering and trading and outposts and things like that come into the game, where being tribal, if you would, makes more sense. I think like what we were talking about earlier, the resource management, you're going to start
Yep.
seeing a lot more orgs pop up. Like when you see a hammerhead pop up, that it's fully crewed, or
Yep.
it's a brand new player that somehow bought it. But more than likely it's going to be a fully crewed hammerhead of guys who usually probably play together in a hammerhead.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
I am too.
Looking forward to that.
I think that PvP is going to be changing a lot over the next, I mean, obviously the game is, but I think that over the next couple patches, we're going to really see a lot of things change in regards to PvP, and also just the quality of life for both people who want PvP and people who don't want PvP. I think there's going to be a lot of options that are changing the game that kind of provide balance, which I got to give a tip of the hat to CIG for trying to address, because I know that they want piracy, they want PvP, and they want it to be an emerging gameplay kind of game where there is no safe mode, there is no like safe space. But I think when Pyro comes out, you're going to see the highest reward, or the best trading missions are going to be where the cops
Definitely.
can't save you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even sooner than later, things like that are going to force people together or give
Yeah.
people a reason
Yeah.
to give people a reason to play together. It's also going to give people something to actually fight over. Because like me personally, we don't really go out just looking for fights. It kind of helps to have a reason, like even with the content that I do, like it's organic. We don't stage anything. We don't call people out for fighting and stuff like that. They're organic encounters. That's why, I can't do content like that all the time because I don't want stuff to be scripted. I want to have that experience. You know what I mean? And sometimes after we talk and we meet new people and it's cool, but it's like that's what I like about the game. I like those random encounters or
Yeah, and when
things like Jump Town. Like I'm definitely not into oh, let's go over to Grim and just blast everybody. Like it's not fun.
Yeah.
no,
Name-
and when you do that too with your content, it makes it more engaging for people that watch it, and then they kind of understand why we enjoy it
yeah.
because of the encounters and how it plays out. Like well, you just don't get the experience anywhere else.
Nope. You don't.
Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of content, guys, the new community hub. I know last week's episode, one of the things I mentioned was, man, we need to get, more tutorials. There needs to be some kind of new onboarding tutorial for new players. And the new community hub showcases a lot of videos from what I'm hearing. 3.18 has some new stuff coming in. That's going to be kind of a surprise add-in. That's going to be completely 100% based around nothing but like tutorials, a few different things like from, buying armor to just how to get to your ship, how to turn on your ship and get out of the hangar and stuff. Which I think
Yeah.
is like the number one thing that's really needed.
Yep.
And then, other than that, I think that the new community hub is going to be awesome for, people like you, 11th Hour, who are doing a lot of like, content, but a lot of players that are new to the game might not be big YouTube or Twitch users.
Right.
I think that the way that they laid it out is very similar to a lot of social media sites where it feels very natural. It feels very like fluid to like filter for content. And I think it's going to help, every content producer, whether it's, a podcast or a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer or, whoever. I think it's going to help a lot of people get more eyes on themselves and by proxy, more eyes on the game. Um, with the new community hub. So I thought that was really cool. That was like one of the main things I thought that they really had to work on was the new user onboarding, and here we are.
Yeah, I've been checking it out the last couple of days. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah,
It's
we're actually listed as
user
one of
friendly.
yeah, we're listed as one of the I think we were listed as the first podcast on there after they launched it, and then right now we actually have a giveaway going on where we're giving away a Crusader C1. And that's available like on our site and on the Discord and stuff like that. I'll also put in the show notes down below. But one of the steps is just to go and upvote our podcast on the community hub, so more people can find it. But I've already found like 2 or 3 new YouTube content creators, just based off of going through the community hub. That for whatever reason, YouTube's algorithm has never shown there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Don't get me
Yeah.
started on that YouTube algorithm. It only shows you what you want to see these days, and that's kind of annoying because for me, someone that likes to just watch the Star Citizen stuff, which is why I've liked actually the exact same reason as you just said, Lacane, is you get to see people that when I'm normally on YouTube trying to watch Star Citizen videos, it's only suggesting what I already really watch. And I want to see the other up and coming YouTube channels or the ones that I just haven't discovered yet because it's more content around it, and I'm a bit hooked. So I really like how they've laid it out because I've found actually a couple new people myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting to see what they're going to continue to hone in on there. I met a couple CIG people or CIG employees at the statewide Bar Citizen event. And one of the things that they told me is like one of their biggest focuses, like as a company, is listening to the community and reacting to what people are saying. And some of the stuff that people suggest really do make sense. I think that they're constantly improving. If it's the area that we think needs to be number one or not, that's debatable. But I think that to say that they're not constantly kind of working on stuff, and just based off what I've already heard, rumor wise of 318. It sounds like we're going to have a ton of stuff baked into that is quality of life that they haven't even mentioned. And I think that's become more their style of like, hey, here's the big stuff, but by the way, we're going to throw in a whole bunch of extra stuff. Like attack, I always call it the attack button, ATC button. just calling the tower button, like that would have been something that I would have put as like my main patch note. Like they know how big that was for us, but they also know it's like, hey, that's not one of the bigger features of the patch. That's just like a quality of life thing. We'll just throw it in there at the end. But to me, that was one of the biggest quality of life improvements we've had in the last year.
I appreciate it every time I flip that little switch on my throttle.
Yeah.
I do. I do.
Yeah, it is nice when they do that because it makes playing the game easier, and not in like a sense of it just takes less time to get something going, like doing anything.
And it's
And
it's
that's why I like
immersive.
those.
Like it's
And it
immersive. Like
is,
you're
and they don't
approaching, the
break the
HEC
immersion.
message comes up, you hit the little button on your throttle, they
Yeah.
give you the pad, like it's fluid.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It makes it still as immersive as they had it before, but instead it's like having the immersion stay the same, but just redesigning the UI.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see what comes from 318 going into Evocati. I definitely feel like this was a Citizencon that, while I wish it was in person, I think next year it will definitely be in person. This year I can understand why they wanted to keep their head down and continue working. I think next year we're going to have a lot of stuff to celebrate, both in Squadron 42 and Star Citizen. So I think that, as things progress, um, I can't confirm it yet, but I can almost guarantee you, me and at least a couple of my buddies from the area are going to be going out there, to CitizenCon. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of like really like stuff that's just going to wow us. But I do feel like of the Citizen Cons that I've seen, this one was definitely like you can tell, just as I think it was Chris Roberts, might have been Aaron Roberts said during one part that we wanted to do it in person, but we've just really had our heads down working, trying to get stuff done. They've onboarded like a ton of new employees. They got like new studios that they've span up. And I really got that feel from the entire thing of CitizenCon. And I just hope that we get to see like the fruits of that effort.
Yeah,
Sooner
definitely.
than later.
Yeah, I was really pumped because Yogi seemed really excited about what they had done with the master modes. Like just you could tell. You know what I mean? There was an energy there. With all of them, but with the master mode thing that he was talking about, it was you could tell that they've accomplished some things. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like he had a
There's
vibe
some
that
stuff he
you know that
did.
they got it right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was when they were talking about it, it felt like they were basically they've spent time on their side just probably rattling their brains trying to figure out what they needed to do, and they're pretty confident in their plan. That's what it feels like. So, and normally on the development side, when they're confident, you can be more confident yourself.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
So,
I'm pretty, I'm interested to see what it's gonna do to like the ship metas. I really hope it shakes up the ship metas when they bring that out.
Yeah, me too. Because
Yeah,
yep.
oh man, I'm over that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love my arrow. It's my number one ship I fly. But I'm tired of fighting other arrows and blades. And especially when the Drake Corsair comes out, I'm gonna try to dogfight with it. It might be shit, but it is
Yeah,
a big gunship. I just want to try it. I want to try dogfighting some other people with a fully crewed Corsair. I feel like it's like a baby Redeemer.
yeah, I'm really curious to see how it shakes up how everyone knows PvP to be now. As far as the who's and what to fly, I
Yep.
am really interested in seeing what these new master modes is the catalyst for. Like I cannot wait.
And kind of how it changes up the what's good and what isn't in the battle range.
Yeah, I mean, and what I'm hoping is what I'm hoping that it does is I'm hoping that it turns into if there was any meta, it's the pilot in the seat.
Yep.
I feel that.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
I think that
that
I think we could get there. I don't know if it's going to be like version one of it. I think they're going to come out with it. 'Cause, again, like everything that they come out with, once people actually have it in their hands and they get more data, I think that's when we start seeing like the real, like version. But I think that like just based off his excitement and based off in the past when you've seen them, bake out something like this and then, get it into our hands and then slowly work on it. I mean, man, I feel like just the level of detail and skill that will go into PvP, assuming that it's not skill tree based and I can't just mine it with an AFK macro, will be absolutely insane.
Right? Well, if you remember, what was it last October and November where they said that they had a team that was actually they were consulting the Royal Air Force and they were getting in flight sims and they were talking to pilots and I
I
know
do remember.
I've been excited ever since I saw that video. I forget the name of the video. It was a Star Citizen live that they did last year. I think it was October or November. And they said they had already been doing it for a few months and I am certain that a lot of what we are going to get has stemmed from just the real shit.
Oh man, I hope so. That would be so amazing.
That would be really awesome.
So dude, I was waiting for that panel. I've been waiting since that video last year. So I knew it was coming. Like I knew something like that was coming, and it really puts the ball back in the court of the pilot.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm looking forward to. Can you fly? Can you fight?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Not, oh, I got this ship and it does da 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 da, and I put these components. No. And they've said it time and time again. You know, they wanted to be one of those things where it's like easy to learn and hard to master. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that they hold true to that and create an experience that is based off of you being good at it.
You know, just talking about that and saying all that, it makes me think of kind of like how I was saying defensive and attack too, but it literally creates where you can be that role of like Han Solo. If you got an MSR, you can almost, if you're the good pilot and you can do all the stuff, you can almost have like that kind of
He's that guy. He
experience.
always gets
Yeah.
away. You know.
Yeah, he's that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of
You know
his
what I'm
skill.
saying?
And so that's really that brings a whole level of like you'll have legends within the game. And
Yeah,
that's
because an awesome
that's
fight
cool.
doesn't have to end in somebody's ship blowing up. Like I am a firm believer in that. You can have an awesome draw. You know
Yep.
what I mean? You can
Yeah.
have an awesome somebody makes a turn and you thought you had them lined up and they took off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Because you might be an awesome dogfighter, but maybe they're in a, like I said, defensive wise, they're like an amazing evasive maneuvers.
right, and they
So
just bleed
it's
you dry for your ballistics. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like now you ain't got the same firepower. You know,
yeah.
it's or you
And they
run
take
out
you
of
into an
run out. Yeah,
asteroid belt or something, and they're
yeah,
just maneuvering
exactly.
like
And they
like how
just
are
give
they
it.
even
They just
doing
give it
that?
to you with just flying. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, it's
So,
gonna be really cool to see how that all ends up playing out.
definitely.
It'll
I'm
definitely
psyched for
create
that. I'm
it'll
all
create some legends.
I done got up out of my seat and whatnot talking about it. It's just it's man.
It's gonna be really, really cool.
Yeah, it is.
yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I think we've been going for about an hour, so I feel like we've talked about Citizencon, we've talked about PvP a little bit, especially like what we see coming up in the new meta. 11th hour, I want to thank you again for coming on this week and spending some time with us, talking
Yeah, not
about
a problem.
PvP and stuff.
Thank you.
Again, guys, 11th hour has a YouTube channel called 11's Hangar. Not only does he dive into, video game, I don't want to say tactics. I want to say more like PvP tactics, if you would, fighting tactics. But he also talks about like different points, features of the game. Talks a lot about what he sees coming for the future of the game. But he's an awesome, awesome, knowledgeable pilot and a very skilled pilot and a great person to learn from. So if you don't already follow him on YouTube, check out that link down below. And of course, make sure you follow the podcast so you guys see us next week when we come out with our next episode where we have another guest join us. And hopefully Spectre will be here as well. But once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to Stanton News Network. And 11, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thanks again for joining, man.